On today's nifty adventure, I set out into the Promontory Mountains north of the Great Salt Lake to visit the site where North America's first transcontinental railroad joined the Atlantic and the Pacific. This is Golden Spike National Historical Park. The park lies at Promontory Summit, 32 miles west of Brigham City. It's about an hour-and-a-half drive northwest of Salt Lake City. The park preserves and documents the area where, on May 10, 1869, the railheads of the Union Pacific, forging west from Omaha, Nebraska, and the Central Pacific, blasting its way east from Sacramento, California, finally met. In a humble on-site ceremony, representatives of the two railroad companies drove 4 spikes made of various precious metals into the final tie. In doing so, they physically united a post-Civil War America with its first transcontinental railroad. The Visitor Center is open 7 days a week from 9 to 5, and all outdoor attractions, including 2 driving tours and a hiking trail, are open year-round from dawn to dusk. On most days from May through October, working replicas of the Central Pacific Jupiter and Union Pacific No. 119 locomotives operate at the last spike site. While the locomotives are the foremost attraction for many, Golden Spike NHP also offers visitors the opportunity to learn about and reflect upon the technological and historical significance of the first transcontinental railroad in an undeveloped natural setting. Today, only a few miles of track remain, but it's possible to drive along several miles of the original 1860s railroad beds. The railroad's history and impact are far more complex topics than I can address in this video, so I've included some resources in the description if you'd like to learn more. Each railroad faced unique staffing challenges. The Union Pacific's workforce of 8,000 to 10,000 comprised Irish, German, and Italian immigrants, Civil War veterans from both sides, former slaves, and indigenous peoples. This was with much of the California labor pool seeking gold and silver. The Central Pacific struggled to retain workers through their contracts. They turned to Chinese immigrants who had limited employment options due to discriminatory policies. At least 11,000 Chinese would eventually make up 90% of the Central Pacific's crew. Blasting the Central Pacific's line through the Sierras was especially dangerous work. Official records of injuries and deaths are lacking, but at least 1,500 Chinese may have died doing this backbreaking work in round-the-clock shifts. In just over 6 years, a total of 1,776 miles of track were laid between Omaha and Sacramento, a territory wider than all of Europe. Before the project began, many at the time, including General William Tecumseh Sherman, doubted they would see the East and West Coasts joined in their lifetime. When completed, a journey that would previously have taken 6 months by ship around South America, or a 5 to 7 month overland trek, could now be completed in under a week. The railroad would forever transform the West, and heralded the end of a way of life for the Plains Indians, among others. Part of the East Driving Tour follows the Central Pacific's grade past Chinese Arch. This limestone formation apparently received its name in the 1880s for a nearby camp of workers. After the Southern Pacific Railroad built a trestle across the Great Salt Lake in 1904, most rail traffic passed far to the south of Promontory. On September 8, 1942, the last spike was ceremoniously removed. The old rail line north of the lake had become obsolete, and the steel of the rails was needed for the war effort. The old grades were largely left to the elements until the area was declared a National Historic Site in 1957. Overall, Golden Spike National Historical Park is humble and understated considering it preserves one of the most significant locations in U.S. history. Still, I highly recommend visiting.
We are on our way to a remote part of Utah to see Golden Spike, the crossroads of the railroads.